Improving productivity is critical everywhere today, but productivity means many things to many people. Too many people think we want them to work harder. Others say, no, just work smarter. But nobody explains how to work smarter. To us, improving productivity means producing more from the same resources. It's generating more throughput out of the system. Throughput is the difference between the selling price of a product and the cost of its raw materials. It's how much money you generate to cover the cost of running the business, your operating expenses. Having successful strategies that improve throughput is like printing money. The challenge is how to do it, how to work smarter. This blue light story has been told and repeated many times. Like all stories that are repeated and repeated, something gets lost in the process, and the last repetition often looks quite different from the initial one. As a result, I would like to get the original story on the record in the words of Kevin Fox, the person responsible for the story. For the past 20 years, I've been sharing a story that has become a metaphor and a model for improving throughput in almost any system. It's been applied to manufacturing, government agencies, service operations, the healthcare field, and a host of other environments with remarkable results. What makes it so effective is that it takes people out of their usual patterns of thinking, which are typically focused on improving local productivity. It gives them a different perspective, one of improving the throughput of a system. As usual, when we gain a fresh view of something, new ideas and solutions pour forth. Back when I was first starting as a consultant, one of my clients was a company that made bumpers for trucks. You know, those big hunks of steel that get shaped by large presses, plated and welded in order to be bolted onto 18-wheelers. The company had a bottleneck in production, which despite extensive efforts, they couldn't seem to break. Orders were going past due, and customers were getting restless about late and unreliable deliveries. The company was missing out on revenue, running high overtime, and at the risk of losing customers. The bottleneck was in the welding department, and to break it, they believed it would be necessary to expand the plant, create new welding space. It was going to cost a bit of money, but worse, it would take time. Time for permits, time for construction, and time to hire and train new welders. It would take months to implement this fix, and they were hoping there might be a faster way to solve their problem. Their solution was certainly not a today solution, which is what they needed. The plant manager had more than 35 years' experience and was more than a little skeptical that our meeting would provide a better solution. He presented a thick booklet that traced their welding efficiency for many years. They were at 93% plus and were at the top of the firms they benchmarked against. It was pretty impressive, and also clear he didn't see much opportunity to even make a small dent in their problem. Back then I was pretty smart and not shy about what I thought I knew. So undeterred by his data, I proceeded to tell him that in my experience, at least 25% more could be produced from the same resources. Looking back, I have to laugh at what he thought of my comments and vast experience. I'm sure I didn't endear myself to him, but rather than butt heads, he suggested we observe the welding department activities. If you haven't been on a manufacturing floor, it's often a whirl of activities. Forklifts scurrying about, machines whirring and banging, people lifting and moving materials. With so much going on, it's easy to lose sight of what matters. Fortunately, my teachers taught me to have a clear image of what should be happening in order to avoid being distracted by the noise. I call it what good looks like. So as we headed out into the plant, I tried to imagine what good would look like in a welding department. I'm not an engineer and had never welded anything, so it wasn't going to be based on an intimate understanding of the process. In my mind, I decided what good looks like would be lots of blue light coming out of a welding torch coupled with a spray of sparks. There could have been a number of other images, but that one worked for me. A moment later, we were standing in front of 3 welding booths, each with a welder behind a metal curtain to keep those sparks from making holes in your clothing. We could faintly see blue light through each of the 3 curtains. Near the welding booths was a large pile of pallets of bumpers waiting to be welded, confirming that welding was most likely a bottleneck. The plant manager starts to explain the process as I observe what is going on. I notice several things. The blue light goes off in booth 1. The welder turns off his torch, removes his helmet and gloves, pulls the screen back, and walks over to booth 2. He pulls that screen back and taps the booth 2 welder on the shoulder. He says something to him, which causes him to turn off his welding torch, remove his helmet and gloves. They proceed back to booth 1 and lift a number of large bumpers off the welding table onto a partially loaded pallet of finished bumpers, and then place several more unfinished bumpers onto the work table. Welder 2 returns to his booth, turns on his torch, and we have blue light. However, welder 1 seems to be picking at something on a bumper. The plant manager notices my puzzlement and explains. We put a plastic coating on every bumper after plating in order to prevent it from being scuffed and nicked as it's moved around. It's greatly reduced the defects and improved the quality of the products. The welder just needs to scrape off small areas so they can weld on the struts. After scraping away the plastic, welding 1 puts the struts into a jig and welds them to a bumper. About 30 seconds of blue light time. He turns off his torch and then repeats the process for the next bumper. We then notice that welder 3 has left his booth and disappeared. He returns a few minutes later with a hand truck, which he uses to move a pallet of finished bumpers out of the booth. He then consults his production schedule and begins the search for the next order. It's soon clear that his search is going to involve moving lots of other pallets before he can find the needed one. It went on and on. Lots of activity, very little blue light. Looking back, I wished I had a video camera to record all the activity. All I could think about is that I really sandbagged the plant manager. There's not 25% more capacity here. I missed it by 1 or 2 zeros. Before I can say anything, the plant manager turns to me and gives me one of the most important lessons I've ever learned. He said, "See, they're working all the time," referring to the welders who indeed were working their butts off. It stopped me in my tracks. How can 2 people having a common objective look at the same thing and reach diametrically opposite conclusions? The plant manager saw that the welders were maxed out, and I saw a host of possible solutions that could immediately increase output. What his comment made me realize, though, was just how important and powerful a different perspective can be. How we look at something literally determines what we see. He looked at the activity of the welders and saw them hustling, working at the maximum. I was looking at the amount of blue light and saw lots of wasted capacity. When we get into the habit of doing or looking at things in a certain way, we don't even think about it or question it. Very often, that makes all the difference in the world.